Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is going well. The vibes on this show are not going to be quite as good as the vibes on many recent shows because we got to kind of talk about if things don't go great for Ohio State this year, where might things fall a little bit short?
Yeah. Who is to blame? What position, if you just line up all the position rooms, like right in a row here, be like, yeah, you give the Uncle Jesse like point at, particular rooms. Which could those be in terms of just falling short, being the unpleasant surprise, if you will? And I've been letting you go first in all of these shows that we've been doing, so I'm gonna just continue because I continue to win. Tom, what's the first one on your mind?
To me, I think the first one is wide receiver to me because you've got Jeremiah Smith. You know what Jeremiah Smith is. The problem you've got is the standard is so high for what an Ohio State wide receiver room is. And you've got Jeremiah Smith, and then everyone else I kind of look at and go, well, I have some questions. Not that they're doomed, not that this can't work, just I have questions. What is Devin McCuin going to be this year? What is Kyle Parker going to be this year? Can Brandon Inniss take a step forward this year? What are you going to get out of the true freshman? These are the answer to all of these could be you're getting a lot. You're going to be incredibly impressed. This is going to be just as good a wide receiver room as it has been over the previous several years. Entirely possible. But this is just, you don't have a Carnell Tate on the other side of the field right now from Jeremiah Smith. Maybe someone will turn into that. Entirely possible. But right now you don't have that. And with as much as Ohio State has leaned on its wide receivers over the last few years, it feels like this is an area where if the offense isn't what it could be, yeah, man, no one else stepped up in the wide receiver room seems like one real plausible way that could happen.
Yeah, and the reason why I let you go first is because I figured this would be where we're going anyway, and it made me seem like a better person. For sure, I agree with you, Tom. Great point. When we look at what Ohio State has had in the past, Devin McCuin, Kyle Parker, Brandon Inniss, Chris Henry Jr., Brock Boyd, Jaquaden Guilford. You throw all of their names out. Nobody's going to be Carnell Tate. And last year they had Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate as the top two guys. The year before, Carnell Tate was the number 3 guy. And certainly there's no number 3 here that is going to match necessarily what Carnell Tate did in 2024, 52 catches, 733 yards, 4 touchdowns. But more than that, like he was very, very good. It's just there was no room for 3,000-yard receivers. And then, 2023, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate as a true freshman. Like the levels that they have had, there's always been this second, I say always, last 6-7 years, there's always been this second first rounder top guy that was there. And they don't have that this year, I don't think. And if they do, then that is the biggest surprise. That is the real surprise here. But just I agree, the step down is why this is an issue, and not just a step down from the talent that they've lost. This is Cortez Hankton having to prove himself and show that he can build, not just build a room, but like put a room out there that produces. And I do expect him to go deeper, which is good in terms of the depth of how many guys are playing. I don't know if they'll throw the ball deeper. That's kind of up to Devin McCuin and those guys. But you can see some issues here. You can see some concerns, and Devin McCuin being the most proven, but also that's at UTSA, and Kyle Parker and Brandon Inniss being veterans, but have had trouble getting over 10 yards a catch, which is a concern. So yes, I'm with you on this one, Tom, very much so. And I think everybody else is as well. I'll go to the other side of the ball. And even though we've talked this position up, and I'm going to say cornerback, where I expect Devin Sanchez to be every bit of an all Big Ten guy. Jermaine Matthews could be as well, as an experienced, has started games every year of his career. We're very high on Dominic Kelly, but he's a true sophomore who has never started and has never played substantial minutes. And the only substantial minutes that Devin Sanchez has played, came last year as a true freshman. So you can't really say he's an established guy. Jermaine Matthews had some moments last year that he would love to have back. And so when we start talking about all of these potential guys and this three-man rotation, like, yeah, but is it good enough to win it all? And Jermaine Matthews is very much a part of the 2024 national title team. And you look at those starting corners of Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun. I think Burke was a 4th or 5th round pick. Igbinosun was a 2nd round pick. So you don't need Marshawn Lattimore and Denzel Ward basically as your corners to win it all. But still, there are questions here. And then if your 4th corner is either a true freshman like Jordan Thomas or Jay Timmons, or Cameron Calhoun, who is now a senior and has only really played one season of his career, there's been plenty of times where a 4th corner has to play, and then every year a 3rd corner has to play. And so while I think they're going to be okay, I don't know how deep they are, and I think there's enough reason for concern with just the top 3 guys, let alone going beyond that.
Yeah, I think this is a perfectly legitimate one. And this is a lot like with the wide receivers. If they had kept Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham, you'd probably feel a little bit more confident in the other pieces that they have in that room. If they had kept Aaron Scott and Bryce West in the corner room, you'd probably feel a little bit better about where things stand there. I don't think that Aaron West or Bryce Scott is going to, nope, reverse that.
Almost.
Aaron Scott and Bryce West. I'm not expecting those guys to be like first team All-American this year or anything like that. But the floor is probably a little bit higher, where you've got guys who've been in that room, played for Tim Walton for a couple seasons. And, these were not guys who were world beaters at Ohio State, but they were guys who, if you had to throw them in there, you were probably going to be okay. You lost those guys now. So now you're trying to sort of fill those holes. You're trying to backfill those holes. I think they did a pretty good job in the portal, bringing in Cam Calhoun and Dominic Kelly to sort of backfill those holes. But you haven't seen it. You haven't seen it on the field in the fall. And until you do, I think that is a legitimate question. And I think that kind of flows into my question on the defensive side of the ball, which would be the linebackers, where it's kind of a lot of the same stuff, where in this case, we're talking about, a lot like Carnell Tate. Boy, do you have someone who's going to be a top 5 pick there? Well, you have 2 guys who are going to be top 10 picks there, because that was the standard last year. And Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese are both gone. So now what? And they've got lots of potential solutions there. I think Peyton Pierce, we have seen the 3rd linebacker at Ohio State have a good season and then just sort of do the take 2 steps forward, and now you're the first, now you're the number 1 linebacker. We've seen that enough, and we saw enough out of Peyton Pierce last year that I don't think I've got any real concerns there. And I think you've got potential solutions with Christian Allegro, and I think you've got potential solutions with Jay Alford and Riley Pettyjohn, and we've done other shows on the linebackers this week where we're talking about, like, yeah, man, you got a lot of potential answers there. Mm-hmm. But this is a little like the wide receivers, where the standard for that room was so high last year that it's going to be hard to match that. And even if the guys who they have all get to like a 75th percentile outcome, which is like, that's an above average outcome, you're still not getting exactly what you had last year. So I think this is going to be a spot where, if people remember what a typical Ohio State linebacker room looks like, I think this unit has a very good chance of living up to that standard. If people are going, well, why don't they just have 2 top 10 picks at linebacker every year? Like, yeah, that's not a realistic standard. But if that's the standard you're holding this year's linebackers to, then you might be a little disappointed.
Yeah, when you say the standard is 2 top 10 picks, I want to be like, hold on. That's like Ryan Day saying our four goals every year is beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win a national title, win a Super Bowl. Like, that's not how things work. That was one time you won the Super Bowl, and that was just because everybody bowed out. Like this, you can't expect to have Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese as your linebackers every year, and I don't think they do. But certainly, you're right. Like, it can be Cody Simon and Tommy Eichenberg, that or whatever. Like there are plenty of good linebacker groups that don't have to be the greatest of all time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think one of the concerns about the entire defense is, you could say this for any position group. You can look at it and be like, like safety, for instance. You're bringing in Terry Moore, who didn't play last year. You're bringing in Earl Little, who played safety, and you're asking him to play nickel. And he did it at Florida State, and this is new. It's a new defense, a lot of moving parts, and you're trying to figure out how do you replace Caleb Downs, and you're using all of these different guys to do it. And I think while you look at it and be like, well, sure, an all ACC safety should work, and well, basically two second team all ACC safeties being brought in with experience and versatility should work out. But there are enough questions there to, what if it doesn't? And I think you'd say the same thing about, defensive tackle or defensive end. As we've talked about all of these positions throughout these last 8 months, basically, or 7 months, you can see they've attempted to address the issues, and in addressing those issues, you're kind of just creating questions until we see the answers, basically.
Yeah, you don't have any sure things in any of these position groups that we're talking about. I think we have Tony and I have, I think, been pretty optimistic based on what we saw in the spring that Earl Little, Terry Moore, these guys are going to be able to step in and do what you need them to do. But similar to the conversation about the two linebackers, similar to the conversation about Carnell Tate, Caleb Downs doesn't work here anymore. And that opens up some, how do you replace Caleb Downs? You don't. You have other guys who are going to play a position similar to what Caleb Downs did last year. You're not going to just be able to do the same stuff you did with Caleb Downs. And the good news on this front is that Matt Patricia knows this. This is not Matt Patricia's first time having to replace a talented player. And so he's going to have some workarounds, and there's just going to be some stuff that they did last year that they might not be able to do exactly the same way this year. But in a lot of these cases, if these guys stay healthy, I'm reasonably confident that the safeties are going to be good. But you lose a guy, or hey, Earl Little can't play nickel as well as they thought, or whatever. I don't have that as a real concern coming out of the spring, but maybe it just doesn't pan out there, and then you got to figure someone else to play nickel. And Terry Moore missed all of last season with an injury. He gets hurt again. Someone else gets hurt again. You got to find another guy to fill that spot. So, yeah, this isn't. Yeah, I think there's a reason that this is the third thing we're talking about on the defensive side of the ball. But I also think between replacing Caleb Downs and not having totally sure things in place, I think it is a legitimate question.
Well, and I'll just throw in, if Earl Little can't play that nickel spot like they want in terms of coverage, what they're going to do is probably move Jermaine Matthews there.
Yep.
Which then thins out the cornerback room, so all of there's just, you plug one hole and boom, now here's another sort of thing.
Yeah. And there are potential solutions everywhere, and you don't need to bat 1,000 on the potential solutions, because you've got a bunch of different stuff where, on the offensive line, we did an offensive line show earlier this week, and you don't need both Ian Moore and Josh Padilla to be perfect, ready to go. You just need one of those guys to be able to do it, and then Austin Arvell to be ready to go at the other open spot. They have a lot of potential solutions, a lot of really intriguing solutions. You got a lot of talent on this roster, as they always seem to, but you need the pieces to sort of fit together.
Yeah, and one last thing on the corner situation, or the nickel situation. I do wonder, they have designs having this safety-based corner or nickel in terms of Earl Little. They would have to change things a little bit if they were to move to a corner at nickel, or would they want to say, no, let's not sacrifice the scheme. Let's just find the next best safety guy that can be there, which is that Jalen McLean, which we saw him a bunch in the slot in the spring, and then Leroy Roker comes in. Again, moving parts, all the questions that the coaches will have to figure out who are the best guys suited. Anything else, Tom?
No, I think we've given people enough to worry about. And, now this is the fun time of year. Everyone's undefeated. Everyone, you ask fans of every team, like, what their record's going to be, and you add them up, and it's like, that's like a 750 winning percentage. I don't think the whole sport can have a 750 winning percentage, but that's all right. This is the This is the time for optimism. So don't let Tony and his hating ways and his downbeat concerns get in the way of your good mood and your excitement about the upcoming football season.
Yes. Be afraid. Be very afraid. That will do it for me. Thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, 5-star rating and review is always appreciated. And the absolute best way to support us is come over and be a member over at BuckeyeInsiders.com. Would love to see you there. Got a great group going. Got a fun and lively environment of message board folks and talking about Ohio State and talking about other things. And if you're looking for a community, I promise you, you won't be disappointed. So come over and find us. That will do it from here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.